Don't touch that. Elena's hand shot out across the table, her fingers wrapping around the wrist of the most dangerous man in the city. The entire private dining room fell silent. Every eye turned to her. The crystal glass hovered inches from Dante Moretti's lips, the faint, bitter almond scent that only she could detect rising from the amber liquid inside. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd just grabbed a mafia boss. The mafia boss. The man whose name made grown men cross themselves and whose reputation painted the streets red. But it was the rim of that glass, that barely visible residue. She knew that shimmer. God help her, she knew it too well. Before we continue, please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. Anyways, 3 hours earlier, Elena Martinez tied her black apron around her waist for the 5th time, her fingers trembling slightly as they always did before the evening shift at Celestial. The restaurant was the most exclusive establishment in the city, where reservations required 6 months' notice and dinner for 2 could cost more than her monthly rent. She was lucky to work here. That's what her manager, Gregory, reminded her daily. Lucky that they'd hired someone like her. Someone with a past. Someone who'd shown up 2 years ago with bruises she'd tried to cover with makeup and a desperation in her eyes that made most people look away. Table assignments, Gregory announced, his voice cutting through the pre-service bustle. He was a thin man with a permanently pinched expression, as if the world constantly disappointed him. Marissa, you have the senator's party. James, the tech mogul in the corner booth. Elena waited, mentally preparing herself for whatever difficult customer she'd be assigned. She was always given the difficult ones, the ones who complained about everything, the ones who sent dishes back 5 times, the ones who left Bible verses instead of tips. Elena! Gregory's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You have the private dining room tonight. Her stomach dropped. The private dining room? Mr. Moretti specifically requested a waitress for his party. Not a waiter. A waitress. Gregory's eyes gleamed with something ugly. Try not to embarrass us. This is the most important reservation we've had in months. Dante Moretti. Even she knew that name, and she made a point of not following the news. Not since she'd escaped to the city 3 years ago. You couldn't live here without hearing about the Moretti family. They owned half the city, the legal half. Rumors said they controlled the other half too. I'll do my best, Elena whispered. See that you do. Gregory leaned closer, his breath smelling of coffee and contempt. Men like that expect perfection. One mistake and you're gone. Understand? She understood. She'd spent 5 years of her life understanding exactly what men like that expected. The private dining room was beautiful in a way that made Elena's chest ache. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over mahogany panels and silk wallpaper. The table was set for 8 with china, so delicate she was afraid to breathe near it. She was arranging the wine glasses when they arrived. Dante Moretti entered first, and the air itself seemed to shift. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, beautiful and cold, and completely unforgiving. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, tailored so perfectly it might as well have been painted on. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Gray, like storm clouds, and just as turbulent. They swept the room with the confidence of a man who owned everything he saw, landing on her for just a moment. Elena looked down immediately, her pulse racing. 7 men followed him in, all dangerous looking, all watching everything, the kind of men who'd been in fights and won them. Good evening, gentlemen, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. My name is Elena, and I'll be serving you tonight. Can I start you with any drinks? Whiskey, one of the men said immediately. The 25-year Macallan. Scotch, another added. Neat. They rattled off their orders, expensive liquors, specific vintages, the kind of drinks that cost what she made in a week. Elena wrote everything down with steady hands, years of practice helping her maintain composure even as her instincts screamed at her to run. When she reached Dante Moretti sitting at the head of the table, he looked up at her with those gray eyes. What do you recommend? He asked. His voice was deep, smooth, the kind of voice that could order someone's death and make it sound like poetry. Elena's throat went dry. The whiskey collection here is exceptional, sir, the Japanese whiskeys in particular. You know whiskey? There was something in his tone. Not mockery, exactly. Interest? Maybe. I know what people say is good, she answered carefully. I can't afford to drink it myself. One of the men snorted. Another smirked. Elena felt her face heat, but she kept her eyes on her notepad. Honest, Dante said softly. I appreciate that. Bring me the Yamazaki 18. Of course, sir. She retreated to the bar with her list, willing her hands not to shake. The bartender, Michael, raised his eyebrows when he saw her order. "Moretti party?" he asked. "Yes. Good luck." He started pulling bottles from the locked cabinet, the expensive ones. Word of advice? Don't make eye contact, don't speak unless spoken to. And whatever you do, don't screw up. "Thanks for the pep talk," Elena muttered. She loaded the drinks onto her tray with meticulous care, balancing the weight perfectly. Years of waitressing had taught her how to carry impossible loads without spilling a drop. It was one of the few skills from her old life that had translated to her new one. The private dining room felt different when she returned, more tense. The men were talking in low voices, and she caught fragments of conversation that made her blood run cold. "Shipment arrives Tuesday. The prosecutor won't be a problem much longer. Sent a message to the Calabrese family." Elena set down the drinks with shaking hands, starting with the men at the far end of the table and working her way toward Dante Moretti. She was hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. One wrong move. One spill. That's all it would take. She placed the Yamazaki 18 inches front of Dante, the amber liquid glowing in its crystal glass. "Thank you," he said, and his eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than necessary. Elena nodded and stepped back to the corner of the room, waiting for their next request. This was the part she hated most about fine dining, standing still, being present but invisible, a servant waiting for commands. The men talked business. She tried not to listen, but it was impossible not to hear. They were discussing territories, money, someone who'd disrespected the family and needed to be dealt with. The casual way they discussed violence made her stomach turn. It reminded her too much of Marcus, her ex-husband, the way he'd talk about people who'd needed to learn their lesson before he'd come home and teach her one. "The dinner service will begin in 15 minutes, Elena said quietly. "Have you all had a chance to review the menu?" They ordered. Expensive steaks, rare fish, dishes with names in French and Italian that most people couldn't pronounce. Elena wrote everything down, memorizing the modifications and special requests. Medium rare, not medium. No butter on the vegetables, extra sauce on the side. She was about to leave to put in their order when the door to the private dining room opened. Gregory stepped in, his face flushed, practically vibrating with anxiety. Behind him stood a man Elena didn't recognize, heavyset, wearing too much cologne with a gold watch that screamed new money rather than old. "Mr. Moretti," Gregory said, his voice unctuous. "I apologize for the interruption, but Mr. Castellano has arrived and requested to pay his respects." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dante didn't move, but somehow his entire posture changed. The casual ease evaporated, replaced by something predatory, dangerous. "Castellano?" Dante said softly. "I don't recall inviting you to dinner." "A gesture of good faith," Castellano said, his smile too wide. He held a bottle of wine, the label obscured by his meaty hand. "I heard you were dining at this fine establishment and wanted to offer a gift. A peace offering, perhaps." "Peace." Dante's voice was flat. "I wasn't aware we were at war." "Of course not. Of course not." Castellano laughed too loudly. "Just a courtesy between businessmen. This is a 1947 Chateau d'Yquem. Very rare. Very expensive. I thought you might enjoy it with your meal." The men around the table had gone completely still. Elena stood frozen in her corner, every instinct telling her to run. "Gregory," Dante said, not looking at the manager, "show Mr. Castellano out." "But, sir," Gregory began. Now. There was no room for argument in that single word. Gregory flinched and reached for Castellano's arm, but the heavyset man shook him off. "At least allow me to pour you a drink," Castellano insisted, his smile growing strained. "It would be an honor." He moved toward the table before anyone could stop him, pulling out a corkscrew. The bottle opened with a soft pop. Castellano produced a fresh wine glass from his pocket crystal, expensive, matching the ones already on the table. "Your finest crystal for your finest vintage," he said, pouring the golden liquid with exaggerated care. He set the glass directly in front of Dante Moretti with a flourish. "To peace," Castellano said, "and prosperity." Dante looked at the glass for a long moment. Then he looked at Castellano. Something passed between them, something dark and full of unspoken threats. "Thank you," Dante said finally. "You may go." Castellano's smile slipped, but he nodded. "Enjoy, Mr. Moretti, enjoy." He left, Gregory scurrying after him. The door closed with a soft click. For a moment, no one spoke. Then one of Dante's men laughed, breaking the tension. "Some nerve on that one," he said. "Showing up uninvited." Trying to buy his way into your good graces with a bottle of wine, another added, shaking his head. Dante didn't respond. He reached for the wine glass, his fingers wrapping around the delicate stem. That's when Elena saw it. The rim of the glass. There was something on it. A faint residue, almost invisible, catching the light just so. It had a crystalline quality, like sugar. But it wasn't sugar. She knew that shimmer. She'd seen it before. The memory hit her like a physical blow. Marcus's study. The night she'd walked in unannounced and found him talking to another man, a man who'd left in a hurry. The glass on his desk with that same faint residue. Marcus explaining it away, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Later, she'd heard about a business rival of his dying suddenly. Heart attack, they'd said. So sudden. So unexpected. She'd found the container hidden in his desk 3 days later. Ricin, tasteless, odorless, and in the right dose, with the right delivery method, almost undetectable. Marcus had caught her looking at it. That was the worst beating of her life. He'd made sure she understood what would happen if she ever told anyone what she'd seen, if she ever even thought about leaving him. But she had left, eventually. After 5 years of hell, she'd left, and now she was watching another man about to drink poison. Time slowed down. She saw Dante Moretti lift the glass toward his lips, saw the crystal rim getting closer to his mouth, saw the faint residue that no one else had noticed, that no one else knew to look for. She didn't think. Don't touch that. Elena lunged forward, her hand shooting across the table. Her fingers wrapped around Dante's wrist, stopping the glass inches from his lips. The entire room exploded into motion. 3 men were on their feet instantly, guns drawn, pointing directly at her head. Elena froze, her hand still gripping Dante's wrist, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She touched the boss. Get her off him. What the hell do you think you're doing? Gregory burst back through the door, his face purple with rage. Elena, have you lost your mind? The glass, Elena whispered, her voice shaking. Don't drink from that glass. She's crazy, one of the men spat. Boss, say the word. Wait. Dante's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He hadn't moved, hadn't tried to shake her off. Those gray eyes were locked on her face. Why? Elena swallowed hard. 3 guns were still pointed at her. One wrong word and she was dead. The rim, she said. There's something on the rim of the glass. Something? Dante's voice was dangerously soft. Poison. I think it's poison. The room erupted again. That's ridiculous. She's trying to sabotage our dinner. This is absurd. Gregory's voice rose to a shriek. Mr. Moretti, I am so sorry. Elena has clearly had some kind of breakdown. I will have her removed immediately. I said, wait. Dante's words cracked like a whip. Everyone fell silent. He looked down at Elena's hand, still wrapped around his wrist, then back at her face. You think someone poisoned my wine? Yes, sir. That's a serious accusation. I know, sir. Why would you think that? Elena's throat closed up. How could she explain? How could she tell him about Marcus, about the ricin, about the business rival who died, about everything she'd escaped? I've seen it before, and she whispered, the way it looks on the glass, that shimmer. I'm sorry, I could be wrong, I couldn't let you drink it without saying something. She's lying. Gregory advanced on her, his face twisted with rage. She's a nobody. A lying, attention-seeking nobody who's trying to ruin this establishment. Mr. Moretti, please let me call the police. Touch her and lose the hand. Dante's voice was soft, but everyone in the room heard it. Gregory stopped as if he'd hit a wall. Dante gently removed Elena's hand from his wrist, his fingers warm against her skin. Then he held up the wine glass, studying it in the light. I don't see anything, one of his men said. Neither do I, another agreed. There. Dante tilted the glass. There is something, very faint. He turned to the man on his right. Marco, get this tested. Now, but boss. Now. Marco took the glass carefully, wrapping it in a napkin. I'll take it to Tony. He can run it through the lab. Fast track it. I want results in an hour. Yes, boss. Marco left at a near run. The remaining men still had their guns out, still watching Elena like she might explode at any moment. Dante Moretti stood, unfolding to his full height. He was even taller than she'd thought, and standing this close, Elena could see the faint scars on his knuckles, the dangerous grace in every movement. Everyone out, he said quietly. Boss? One of the men questioned. Out. Wait in the hall. All of you. But, did I stutter? The men filed out reluctantly, holstering their weapons. Gregory backed toward the door, sputtering about insurance and liability and reputation. You too, Gregory, Dante said. Close the door behind you. Gregory fled. And then Elena was alone with the most dangerous man in the city. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She just grabbed him, accused someone of trying to poison him, caused a scene in front of his entire crew. Any moment now, he was going to. Sit down. Elena's knees gave out. She collapsed into the nearest chair. Dante Moretti walked slowly around the table, his eyes never leaving her face. He pulled out the chair directly across from her and sat, his movements precise and controlled. What's your full name? He asked. Elena Martinez. How long have you worked here, Elena Martinez? 2 years. And before that, I worked at a diner in Nevada. Nevada. His eyes narrowed slightly. You're not from here. No, sir. Why did you leave Nevada? Elena's hands twisted in her lap. Personal reasons. Personal reasons, he repeated. Try again. Her voice cracked. I left my husband. Divorce? No, I just left. Understanding flickered across Dante's face. He hurt you. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded anyway, unable to speak. And this poison you saw on my glass. You said you'd seen it before. Yes. Where? This was it? The moment she had to decide whether to tell the truth or lie to a man who probably killed people for lying to him. My ex-husband, she whispered. Marcus. He kept it in his study. I saw it once, on a glass he was preparing for someone. He told me it was for a business rival. A week later, the man was dead. They said it was a heart attack. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Your ex-husband murdered people. Yes. And you stayed with him. He said he'd kill me if I left. Elena's voice was barely audible. He said he'd find me anywhere I went, that no one would believe me anyway, that I was nothing without him. But you left anyway. Yes. Rave. Elena laughed, a broken sound. I was terrified. I'm still terrified. I thought I'd escaped all of this. And then tonight, I saw that glass, and I reacted. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have touched you. I know better than to touch men like... She stopped herself. Men like what? Dante's voice was soft. Dangerous. Men who can hurt me, Elena whispered. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Look at me, Dante commanded. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. I am going to ask you a question, he said, and I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Yes. If that glass is poisoned, if you just saved my life, what do you want in return? Elena stared at him. What? Everyone wants something, Elena. Money, protection, a favor. What do you want? She shook her head. Nothing. I just didn't want you to die. Why not? Dante leaned forward. You don't know me. For all you know, I'm a bad man, a dangerous man. Maybe the world would be better off without me. Maybe, Elena said quietly, but it's not my choice to make, and nobody deserves to be poisoned. Dante studied her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. It transformed his face, made him look almost human instead of carved from ice and stone. You're an interesting woman, Elena Martinez. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Marco rushed in, his face pale. Boss, Tony ran the test. 3 times, to be sure. And ricin, high concentration, mixed with something to make it dissolve slower so it would look like a heart attack in a few hours. Marco's voice was tight with controlled rage. If you'd drunk that, you'd be dead before midnight. The room went completely still. Elena felt dizzy. She'd been right. She'd actually been right. Castellano, Dante said softly. It wasn't a question. Has to be, Marco agreed. That bottle he brought, the glass he poured from, it's the only thing that makes sense. Find him. Already on it. Got guys tracking his car now. Good. Dante stood, his movements fluid. And Marco, when you find him, I want him alive. We're gonna have a conversation about his understanding of peace offerings. Marco grinned, and it was not a pleasant expression. Understood, boss. He left. Dante turned back to Elena, who was still sitting frozen in her chair. You saved my life, he said simply. I saw the poison. I couldn't. You saved my life, he repeated more firmly. And now I owe you a debt. Do you understand what that means? Elena shook her head. It means you're under my protection. As of this moment, no one touches you. No one threatens you. No one so much as looks at you wrong without answering to me." He paused. "Including your ex-husband." What was his name again? "Marcus," Elena whispered. "Marcus Reeves." Dante pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "Last known location, Las Vegas." "But Dante, Mr. Moretti, you don't have to." "I don't have to do anything," he said quietly. "I want to. Consider it a thank you gift." "I don't want him dead," Elena said quickly. "I just want him to leave me alone." Dante's eyes met hers. "He will leave you alone. I promise you that. Whether he dies is up to him. If he's smart, he'll disappear and never think your name again. If he's not." He shrugged. "Then he makes his choice." Elena didn't know what to say to that. "You're fired, of course," Dante continued casually. Her heart dropped. "What?" "From here. You can't work here anymore, not after tonight." He smiled slightly at her expression. "Don't worry, you're hired." "Hired? I need someone to taste my food and drinks. Someone I can trust. Someone who knows what to look for." His eyes held hers. "Someone brave enough to grab my hand and stop me from dying." "You want me to work for you?" Elena's voice came out as a squeak. "Yes. The pay is better. Much better. The hours are worse. And the job is dangerous. But I protect my people, Elena. Always. You'll be safer with me than anywhere else in this city." "I don't. I need to think. Think fast. You have 30 seconds before Gregory comes back in here to fire you himself." Elena's mind raced. This was insane. Working for a mafia boss, tasting his food for poison, it was everything she'd tried to escape from. But as she looked at Dante Moretti, at the man who'd listened to her when everyone else thought she was crazy, who'd believed her about the poison, who'd just promised to protect her from Marcus. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Okay, yes." Dante's smile widened. "Smart woman." He held out his hand. "Welcome to the family, Elena." She took his hand, his grip warm and strong. The door burst open again. Gregory rushed in, followed by the restaurant owner, both of them red-faced and angry. "Mr. Moretti, I cannot apologize enough for this woman's behavior," Gregory began. "Elena no longer works for you," Dante interrupted. "She works for me now. I suggest you find a new waitress for this evening." But, the owner sputtered, "and I'll be taking my business elsewhere in the future. A restaurant that allows poisoned wine to be served to its guests clearly has security issues." Dante's voice could have frozen fire. "I'd suggest you review your protocols. Thoroughly." He turned to Elena. "Come, my men will take you home to pack your things. You start tomorrow." Elena stood on shaking legs. As she followed Dante Moretti out of the private dining room, past the gaping staff and shocked customers, she caught her reflection in one of the ornate mirrors lining the hallway. She looked terrified, but underneath the fear, there was something else. Hope. 3 months later, Elena sat in the sunlit breakfast room of Dante's estate, reviewing the morning's meal plan. She'd settled into her role more easily than she'd expected. The job was exactly as advertised: long hours, constant vigilance, and yes, dangerous. But she'd never felt safer in her life. Dante had been true to his word. No one touched her. No one threatened her. Men who'd once looked at her with contempt now nodded respectfully when she passed. She had an apartment in a secure building, a car that actually worked, and more money in her bank account than she'd ever dreamed of. And Marcus? Marcus had disappeared. She'd gotten a single message, delivered through one of Dante's men, 3 days after that night at the restaurant. It was a photo of Marcus boarding a plane to South America, looking over his shoulder with terrified eyes. The message attached simply said, "He won't be bothering you again." She hadn't heard from him since. "Morning," Dante said, entering the breakfast room. He was dressed more casually today, slacks and a button-down shirt instead of his usual suit. They'd settled into an easy routine over the past 3 months. He treated her with respect, listened when she talked, and never, ever raised his voice to her. It was strange, working for a man who killed people for a living and yet made her feel safer than she'd ever felt with her own husband. "Morning," Elena replied, gesturing to the covered dishes on the sideboard. "Breakfast is ready. I've already tested everything." "You always do." Dante poured himself coffee, then surprised her by pouring a second cup and placing it in front of her chair. "Sit, eat with me." "I'm supposed to taste your food, not eat with you," Elena protested, but she sat anyway. This had become their morning ritual. Dante insisting she eat, Elena protesting, both of them knowing she'd give in. "You tasted it. Now eat it." He loaded a plate with eggs and bacon, sliding it across to her before filling his own. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then, Dante spoke. Castellano is dead. Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Did you? No. He tried to run, made it as far as Chicago before the Calabrese family found him. Dante's voice was matter of fact. Turns out he'd made enemies in multiple cities. They took care of him for me. Oh, does it bother you, knowing he's dead? Elena thought about it. The man had tried to murder Dante. Would have succeeded if she hadn't stopped him. Would have poisoned a human being and felt nothing about it. No, she said honestly. It doesn't bother me. Good. Dante studied her across the table. You've changed since you started working for me. Changed how? You smile now. You don't flinch when I move too quickly. You argue with me when you think I'm wrong about something. He paused. You're becoming yourself again. Elena's throat tightened. He was right. She had changed. The terrified woman who grabbed his wrist that night in the restaurant seemed like a different person now. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me a chance, for protecting me, for everything. You saved my life, Elena. It's the least I can do. Still, thank you. Dante was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes studying her with an intensity that made her heart race. Can I ask you something? Of course. That night, at the restaurant, when you grabbed my hand, you had to know how dangerous that was. My men could have shot you. I could have killed you myself. Why did you do it? Elena met his gaze. Because it was the right thing to do. Even for a man like me? Even for you. Something shifted in Dante's expression. He stood slowly, walking around the table until he was standing beside her chair. Elena's pulse quickened, but not with fear. Not anymore. Elena, he said softly, I need to tell you something. Okay. These past 3 months, working with you, talking with you, watching you bloom back into the strong, brave woman you were always meant to be. He paused. You've become important to me, more important than I expected. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Dante, let me finish. He reached down, his fingers tilting her chin up so she was looking directly at him. I'm not a good man. I've done terrible things. I'll probably do more terrible things. But when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be something other than a monster. You're not a monster, Elena whispered. I am. But maybe, with you, I could be something more. His thumb brushed across her cheek, gentle and reverent. You could walk away right now. I'd set you up anywhere in the world, make sure you're safe and comfortable for the rest of your life. You owe me nothing. I don't want to walk away. No. Elena stood, bringing herself closer to him. These past 3 months have been the best of my life. I'm not afraid anymore. And that's because of you. Elena, her name was a prayer on his lips. I'm not saying I know what this is, she continued, her voice gaining strength, or what it could be, but I know I don't want it to end. Dante's eyes searched her face. I could hurt you, not intentionally, but my world is dangerous. I know. I'm not afraid. You should be, but I'm not. Elena reached up, her hand resting against his chest, feeling his heart beating strong and steady beneath her palm. I trust you, Dante, completely. Something in his expression cracked. The ice, the control, all of it melting away to reveal raw, vulnerable hope. You trust me, he repeated. Yes. Even knowing what I am, especially knowing what you are, Elena smiled. You're a man who keeps his promises, who protects the people he cares about, who listened to a terrified waitress when everyone else thought she was crazy. That's the man I trust. Elena, Dante's hand slid into her hair, cradling her head with infinite gentleness. If I start this, if I kiss you, I won't be able to let you go. You'll be mine. And I protect what's mine with everything I have. Promise? His laugh was shaky, almost disbelieving. You're sure? Instead of answering, Elena rose on her toes, closing the distance between them. Dante met her halfway, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was surprisingly gentle. His hand cradled her head, his other arm wrapping around her waist, holding her close but never trapping her. It was nothing like the rough, demanding kisses Marcus had forced on her. This was tender, reverent, a question and an answer all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. Mine, he whispered. Yours. Elena agreed. Outside the breakfast room, she could hear the sounds of the estate waking up. Guards changing shifts, staff beginning their daily routines, the normal rhythms of Dante's world, her world now. 3 months ago, she'd been a terrified waitress, so broken she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be whole. Now, she was standing in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city, and she'd never felt safer. I should warn you, Dante said, his voice warm with amusement. My family is going to want to meet you, officially. He paused. As your what? Elena asked. What do you want to be? Elena thought about it. Girlfriend seemed too small. Partner too clinical. There had to be a word for what they were becoming, this tentative, precious thing growing between them. How about we start with Elena and Dante, she said finally, and see where it goes? Elena and Dante, he repeated, testing the words. I like that. Me too. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. When they broke apart, his smile was genuine and unguarded. Come on, he said, taking her hand. We have a busy day. There's a shipment coming in that I need to inspect. And then we have that meeting with the Costello family. And I need to check the ingredients for tonight's dinner, Elena added. The fish supplier is new and I don't trust him yet. That's my girl, always cautious. My girl. The words sent warmth flooding through her chest. As they left the breakfast room together, Elena caught sight of their reflection in the hallway mirror. Dante Moretti, tall and dangerous and powerful, his hand wrapped gently around hers. And beside him, Elena Martinez, no longer looking terrified. She looked happy. 3 months ago, she'd grabbed a Mafia boss's hand to save his life. Today, she held that same hand because she wanted to. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, the engagement party was everything Elena never knew she wanted. She stood on the balcony of Dante's their estate, looking out over the gardens where 200 guests mingled below. The party had been Dante's idea. She'd protested at first, uncomfortable with the attention, but he'd insisted. I want everyone to know, he'd said simply. I want the whole city to know you're mine, that you're protected, that touching you means war. So here they were. Elena wore a dress the color of champagne, simple but elegant, that Dante had commissioned from a designer in Milan. Around her throat was a necklace of diamonds and sapphires that probably cost more than her childhood home. On her finger sat an engagement ring with a stone so large she'd actually laughed when she first saw it. It's too much, she'd protested. It's not enough, Dante had replied. Nothing is enough for you. Below, she could see Dante moving through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a classic film, all sharp lines and controlled power. Every few minutes, his eyes would scan the balcony, finding her, making sure she was still there, still safe, still his. Quite the party, a voice said beside her. Elena turned to find an older woman standing there, elegant in a navy dress, her gray hair swept up in a sophisticated twist. She had Dante's eyes. Mrs. Moretti, Elena said, straightening. I didn't hear you come up. Call me Sophia, please. Dante's mother smiled. We're going to be family soon, after all. They'd met a few times over the past few months. Sophia had been cautious at first, protective of her son, but she'd warmed to Elena gradually. Now she looked at Elena with something like approval. Are you happy, dear? Sophia asked. Yes, Elena answered honestly, happier than I ever thought I could be. Good! Sophia moved to stand beside her, both of them looking out over the party. My son has done many things in his life, not all of them good. But the way he looks at you. She trailed off, her voice thick with emotion. I haven't seen him look at anyone like that since his father died. Elena's throat tightened. Dante rarely spoke about his father, but she knew the man's death had changed him, hardened him into the person he was today. He's a good man, Elena said softly. Despite everything he's done, everything people think about him, he's good to me. He is, Sophia agreed. And you're good for him. You've changed him, Elena. Softened some of his edges. Reminded him that there's more to life than power and revenge. She turned to face Elena fully. When you grabbed his hand that night at the restaurant, you didn't just save his life. You gave him a reason to keep living it. Before Elena could respond, Dante appeared in the balcony doorway. Mama, he said, his voice warm. I should have known you'd steal my fiancé away. Someone has to make sure she knows what she's getting into, Sophia replied. But she was smiling. She kissed her son's cheek, then Elena's. Take care of each other. She left them alone on the balcony. Dante immediately pulled Elena into his arms, holding her close. You okay? He asked. Not overwhelmed? A little, Elena admitted, but in a good way. I never thought I'd have this. Any of this. You deserve it all. And more. He kissed her forehead. Thank you. For what? For saying yes. For staying. For trusting me with your heart even though I don't deserve it. Elena pulled back enough to look up at him. You deserve everything, Dante. Everything good in this world. I have everything good in this world right here. His arms tightened around her. Right here in my arms. From below, someone called Dante's name. He sighed. Duty calls, he muttered. Come with me? Always. They descended the stairs together, Dante's hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. People parted for them, heads turning, whispers following in their wake. The Mafia boss and his waitress, the dangerous man and the woman who'd saved him. Elena didn't care what they whispered. She learned over the past 9 months that gossip meant nothing. Actions meant everything. And Dante's actions had proven again and again that she mattered to him, that she was safe, that she was loved. Mr. Moretti! A young man approached, nervous energy radiating from him. Congratulations on your engagement, sir. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the new sommelier at Celestial, and I wanted to assure you that we've completely overhauled our security protocols. I'm sure you have, Dante said coolly, but Elena and I won't be dining there. But, sir, please, we've made so many changes. Perhaps you should have made them before allowing someone to serve poisoned wine to your guests. Dante's voice was pleasant, but his eyes were ice. Good evening. The sommelier retreated, pale-faced. You didn't have to do that, Elena murmured. Yes, I did. They endangered your life that night by allowing Castellano into that room. I don't forgive that easily. He was trying to poison you, not me. And you saved me, which put you in danger, which means they put you in danger. Dante's jaw was tight. I don't forget, Elena. Ever. She knew he didn't. It was one of the things that made him so dangerous. But it was also one of the things that made her feel so safe. Dante Moretti never forgot the people who'd helped him. And he never forgot the people who'd hurt those he loved. The party continued late into the night. Elena met what felt like hundreds of people, business associates, family members, allies from other cities. Everyone wanted to congratulate them, to meet the woman who'd captured Dante Moretti's heart. It was exhausting, but also wonderful. As midnight approached, Dante pulled her aside, leading her away from the crowd to a quiet corner of the garden. Music drifted from the party, but here it was muted, peaceful. I have something for you, he said. Dante, you've already given me too much. This is different. He pulled a small envelope from his jacket pocket. Open it. Elena opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were 2 airplane tickets. Paris, she read aloud. First class, leaving next week. Our honeymoon, Dante explained. 2 weeks in France, just you and me. No business, no guards. Well, he amended, minimal guards. Just enough to keep us safe. Paris, Elena repeated, her voice full of wonder. I've never been to Paris. I know. You mentioned it once, months ago, that you'd always wanted to go. His hands cupped her face. I want to give you everything you've ever wanted, Elena. Paris is just the start. Tears pricked her eyes. How did I get so lucky? I'm the lucky one. Dante's thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. You could have let me drink that poison, could have stood by and done nothing. Instead, you risked everything to save a man you didn't even know. I knew enough, Elena said. I saw how your men looked at you. With respect, not fear. I heard how you spoke to the staff at the restaurant. Firm, but never cruel. I knew you were dangerous. But I also knew you were more than that. You saw me, Dante said softly. The real me. Not the reputation or the rumors. Just me. And I liked what I saw. He kissed her then, deep and tender, pouring everything he couldn't say into that single kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he whispered. Elena laughed. I already said yes, remember? That's what the engagement party is for. Marry me now. Tonight. She pulled back, staring at him. What? I have a judge here, a friend of the family. He could marry us right now, right here in the garden. Dante's eyes were intense, burning with emotion. I don't want to wait, Elena. I've waited my whole life to feel this way, to find someone who sees me and loves me anyway. I don't want to wait another day. But the party, the guests, the party is for them. This would be for us. His hands found hers, squeezing gently. Say yes, Elena. Marry me tonight. Let me make you mine in every way that matters. Elena's heart raced. It was crazy, impulsive, nothing like the careful, controlled life she'd built since escaping Marcus. But then again, grabbing Dante's hand that night had been crazy too. And look where that had led her. Yes, she whispered. Yes, let's do it. Dante's face lit up with a joy so pure it took her breath away. He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. Give me 15 minutes to arrange everything. I'll be here. He kissed her one more time, quick and fierce, then disappeared back toward the house. Elena stood in the garden, alone with her thoughts. 9 months ago, she'd been a terrified waitress, broken and afraid, convinced she'd never be anything more than what Marcus had told her she was. Now she was about to marry a mafia boss. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt nothing but joy. 15 minutes later, almost to the second, Dante returned. With him were his mother, Marco, and a distinguished-looking man in his 60s carrying a leather-bound book. Judge Morrison, Dante introduced. An old family friend. He's agreed to perform the ceremony. It's an honor, the judge said, shaking Elena's hand. Dante's told me a great deal about you, my dear, about how you saved his life. I just did what anyone would do, Elena said. No, Sophia interjected, her eyes shining. You did what only the bravest would do. You're perfect for my son. Marco grinned at Elena. Welcome to the family officially, though we've all considered you part of it for months now. Are we ready? Judge Morrison asked. Dante took Elena's hands, his grip steady and sure. Ready. The ceremony was simple. No bridesmaids, no processional, no hundreds of witnesses, just Dante and Elena standing in the moonlit garden, promising to love and protect each other for the rest of their lives. When Judge Morrison said, "You may kiss your bride," Dante pulled Elena close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. "Mrs. Moretti," he murmured against her lips. "My wife." "My husband," Elena replied, testing out the words. They felt right, perfect. They returned to the party hand in hand, both grinning like children with a secret. The guests continued celebrating, none of them knowing that they were no longer just celebrating an engagement, but a marriage. Elena didn't care. This was better, more intimate, more real. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Dante pulled Elena back up to the balcony where they'd stood earlier. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For saving my life, for staying, for marrying me." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, holding her close. "For being brave enough to grab my hand that night and change everything." Elena leaned back against his chest, watching the last of the guests trickle out of the garden below. "I should be thanking you," she said. "You gave me a life. A real life. One where I'm not afraid anymore. You were never weak, Elena. You were surviving. There's a difference. Maybe. But I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living." She turned in his arms to face him. "I'm happy, Dante. Truly, completely happy." "Good." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "That's all I want. Your happiness, your safety, your love. You have all three. Always." They stood together on the balcony as the moon rose higher, casting silver light over the gardens. Below, the staff began cleaning up, their voices soft in the night air. Somewhere in the distance, a car door closed, an engine started, the last guest departing. And Elena realized something. She was home. Not the estate, though it was beautiful. Not the city, though she'd grown to love it. Home was here, in Dante's arms, safe and loved and cherished in a way she'd never been before. "Ready for bed, Mrs. Moretti?" Dante asked, his voice warm with amusement. "Only if you're coming with me, Mr. Moretti." He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Always, for the rest of our lives." They walked inside together, leaving the empty balcony behind. Tomorrow they'd start planning for Paris. Tomorrow they'd deal with business and responsibilities and all the complications of their intertwined lives. But tonight, they were just Dante and Elena, husband and wife. Two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way and chosen to hold on no matter what. And as Elena drifted off to sleep that night, wrapped in Dante's arms, she thought about that moment in the restaurant. The moment when she'd seen the poison on the glass rim and made a choice. She'd reached out to stop death. Instead, she'd found life.